ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As always, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I find each one of you in good health, wealth, and iman. Ameen. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if any one of us is going through any difficulties, frustrations, anxiety, or sorrow, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes it and He replaces it with the sakeenah. And I also pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He showers us with His love. And He gives us the love of those that He loves. And He gives us the love of those actions that He loves. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Before I progress, there was a few requests for some du'as. First, actually yesterday, my wife's cousin, his name's Ammar, he passed away in Pakistan. Young man, 28 years old. Was riding a motorcycle, and unfortunately he wasn't able to survive it. So when you're making du'as for your loved ones, please mention his name, Ammar. The other is another relative of mine, my brother-in-law. His name is Muhammad Fahim. Critical condition, lives in the Bay Area. He was on the ventilator, they just took him off the ventilator. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him good health and he returns back to his own. And a colleague of mine, mashallah, she teaches Quran with me. Her name is Ustada Sumaya Tariq, a remarkable young teacher. Her grandmother is ill, so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give her shifa and that she comes back to complete health. Alhamdulillah, I had the benefit of studying in a large madrasa in Pakistan many years ago in 1990. And one of my colleagues who studied with me, out of those batch of kids, mashallah, he became very successful as an imam. He lives out in Calgary. His name is Fayaz Tilly. And when I say as a successful imam, mashallah, he has a successful madrasa, mashallah, a large amount of kids in his masjid. They memorize the Quran and they go on and become a benefit to the community. But not only that, he's a chaplain at the university, and he does a lot of interfaith works with different communities and organizations, with the churches and at the synagogues. And alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with speaking with clarity. And when he gives a speech, normally I listen to it and I take notes from his speech. So one time he was giving a speech in a church, and one of the members of that church asked him, if you were to define Islam in a sentence, how would you define it? And what he said was very comprehensive, and I want to share with you. He said that our purpose is to worship the Creator by servicing its creation. Very comprehensive, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by servicing its creation, by taking care of those that are around us, to help them, to assist them, to notice their struggles, and to give to them without asking. And this is from our sunnah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll share an incident with you. Once Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he was struggling. He hadn't eaten many days, and he was struggling out of hunger. So he was too shy to ask for food. So he was going around and asking, some of the prominent companions, what is the meaning of this ayah? In reality, he wanted help, but he didn't want to ask. So he goes to one companion, didn't notice his state. So they told him what the ayah meant. He goes to another companion, and he asked them, what does this ayah mean? And they didn't realize his struggle. And the Prophet ﷺ noticed him, and he said, come here and eat with me. And that's the beauty of our religion, is that we look beyond ourselves. And we give to those without them even asking. And as a believer, when we give, we don't feel like our wealth is decreasing. And when we give out of joy. We give out of joy. And it's kind of interesting, normally if there's like a humanitarian cause, or if the masjid is asking for donations, sometimes we become very reluctant. Should I give some money? How is it going to affect my budget? But when we spend on ourselves, we spend very openly. I'll give you an example. I always deal with this issue. Whenever I go to Costco, I only go for eggs and milk. But when I come back, my cart's full of things that weren't on my list. They weren't on my list. But it's okay because I'm spending it on myself. So it's important to us that we give to those without them even asking. And if you were to look at your monthly bank statement, see how much you give and how much you spend on yourselves. It's pretty shocking. And this is the identity of the Muslims, that we gave, and we gave without people asking. So for instance, it's a very well-known story that a Sahabi, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he was complaining of hunger and distress. So he sent a request to his homes, and each of his wives responded back saying that we have nothing in our homes except water. That's one example of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, that he understood his people because he himself was also struggling. So he sent out a request to his companions, is anybody willing to host this companion who is struggling? So one Sahabi stood up and said, yes, I'll take him home. So he takes him home, and he tells his wife that we have a guest of the Prophet ﷺ. And she says that we only have enough food for our kids. It's different when we sacrifice for ourselves. But then there's another aspect when we make that sacrifice when it comes in regards to our children. So he says, we'll put them to sleep, and we'll feed this guest of ours, the guest of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll make sure that he eats well, and when we're eating with him, we'll dim the lights, and we'll act like we're eating, but we'll make sure that he's eating the most of it. And that's what happened. The following day, the Prophet ﷺ gave that companion of glad tidings, saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved that action so much that few verses of the Quran were revealed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in regards to this, and He says that they prefer others above themselves, even though poverty becomes their lot. And this is the identity of a Muslim. That we prefer others before ourselves. That we're not selfish, but we're selfless. On another occasion, something very similar. A companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he's struggling out of hunger. He hasn't eaten in days. And I want you guys to use this imagination. Like right now, maybe some of you came before the Friday prayer and had lunch. Maybe some of you are going to have an amazing lunch afterwards and go home. But I want you guys to use your imagination, like, when it's the 20th fast or the 21st fast and it's iftar time, like, you cannot tolerate that hunger. I have young children. They look at that time and they give me a minute countdown. Baba, there's 31 more minutes. There's 30 minutes. There's 29 minutes. I was like, oh wait, I get the idea. So this is a companion who's struggling, and somebody offers him a meal. So I'm hoping you can kind of relate to what he was going through. But before he starts to eat that meal, he says, you know what? I know my neighbor's struggling. They're in need of it more. So he gives them that plate of food to that companion. And that companion gives that plate of food to his neighbor. And narrations say that that plate of food went into 7 different houses and it came back to the original place where it started from. SubhanAllah. That's what the Muslim is. He's unique. He's outstanding. You know, there was an Imam of Medina. He was so well in tune with his community that he knew the people who were struggling in his community. And he didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. So what he would do is that when he would wake up for tahajjud, he would leave a bag of food in front of their house. So when they would wake up for Fajr, there was food in front of their house. They only realized it was him because when he passed away, the following morning, there was no bag. There was no bag. Another occasion, just to drive the point home. It's the Battle of Yarmouk. And a companion, a Sahabi, he went to look out for his cousin. And he finds his cousin. It's a battle and they're all wounded. And majority of them are taking their last breath. Their last breath. So this cousin, to bring ease in these final moments for him, he goes and presents a glass of water. So as he's giving him the glass of water, he hears another companion from a distance moaning out of struggle. And his cousin says, no, go give him the glass of water. He goes there, and when he gets to that companion, the companion hears another Muslim, another Sahabi moaning out of struggle, and he says, no, go give it to him. And by the time he goes to the third one, he passes away. He comes back to the second, he passes away, and he comes back to his cousin, and he passed away. The selflessness, that having this belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by putting your Muslim brother or sister before you and before your needs. And this characteristic of selflessness it's natural in our hearts. This compassion, this empathy, this care. But this characteristic can only be developed when we prefer others before ourselves. And if we were to adopt this characteristic, not only will it benefit us, it benefits the whole community. Imagine a community, entire community, where they're preferring others before themselves. A community when they look out for their Muslim brothers in regards to their finances, or their emotional health, or their mental health. That's a community. And these are not idealistic ideas. This is what Islam teaches us. This is what Quran teaches us. If we were to look at the teachings of Islam, a large component of our religion is about social engagement. Sometimes what do? We just define it by, a set of rituals and theology. But when we study Islam, Islam teaches us and it guides us in all matters. In regards to us being fathers and mothers, brothers and sons, community members, employer, employees. That this religion is a guidance for everybody. This relationship that we have with our fellow believers, it's a unique one. It's like we're a brick in a building. And the believer for another believer is like a building. We are all connected. There's nothing more praiseworthy. Nothing more praiseworthy to help your brother when they are in need. And when they're in difficulty, to make them happy. So if they need food, we provide them food. If they need assistance, we give them assistance. And that is something that our religion inspires us to do. Is that we, not only do we give up our wealth, but we look at their humanity in it too. That we don't overlook the orphan. We don't overlook, the people who are in need, or our family members, the poor or the destitute. Very popular hadith, our Prophet ﷺ, he said that none of you will truly believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And that's why our companion, the Prophet ﷺ's companions were so outstanding when it came to giving. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he never had a meal until he sat down and ate it with an orphan. SubhanAllah. That same companion, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, whenever he got attached to something, he thought whatever that was would get between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right away he would donate it. Abdul Qadir Jalani rahmatullah alayhi, he says that if I was given the entire wealth of the world, I would donate it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, these stories that I mentioned, they're not just stories. These incidents are to inspire us and to provide a different perspective. And you know, when we're working on our iman and we want to improve ourselves, this is one characteristic that we should try to incorporate it in our lives, is to be selfless. One is to be selfless with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does one become selfless with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? One is that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives preference to, we keep that as our priority. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do, we do it. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has restricted us from doing things, we stay away from those things. And the other way we can incorporate selflessness is with our community members. To be concerned about their well-being. If, whenever we turn on the news, we always see, something's happening in that country. Something's happening in that country, Muslim countries. And it should bother us. It should bother us. It was a war-torn country. They were asking one of the fathers, and it really bothered him. They said, can you please explain your state? Like, what's your emotional state? He said something that just, it grabbed my attention. He said that he goes, we've become so hopeless in our country that I stopped dreaming about my children's future. And that bothered me. As a father, that's all I do. That's all I do at work. Every single day I'm just dreaming about what my child is going to be. What opportunities that he's going to get, and I'm hoping to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he takes advantage of those opportunities. So when our brothers and sisters are struggling, what can we do? One is that we should make dua for them. When we make dua for our mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, the least that we can do is make dua for them. And when it's time and need to help them, either if it's financially, we should support them. I gave you the example when I was studying in madrasa in 1990 in Pakistan. Majority of those kids were orphans. And if you were to donate towards an education towards an orphan child there in the madrasa, it would only cost you $250. And that would provide lodging, clothing, and food for them. What's $250 for us? It's nothing. Some of us spend that out, for dinner when we go out. I remember one time, a lot of people would come to our mother's house and they would give their zakah. And I'll never forget this. So one brother, there was over 2,000 students in our mother's house. And he would, they would make lines and the students would come and they would pay their zakat to each of the students. So the person who was giving zakat, he found out there was foreign students. We had students from America, Australia, Africa, Europe. We were all studying there. He said, I'm not going to give them zakat, but I just want to give them like sadaqah. I'm happy, they're studying ilm. We want to give them something. So he said, tell them to get in line too. So we got in line. So there was this young boy who was standing in front of me. He was from Swat. And normally the people from Swat, they have blue eyes and blonde hair. It's not normal for Karachi, right? So the person who was giving zakah, when he saw him, he said, oh, subhanAllah, such a handsome boy. Such a handsome boy. So he gave him the money and he hugged him. And right when he hugged him, the boy started to cry. And he gave the money back. And he says, the uncle said, why are you giving my money back? He says, since my parents passed away, this is the first time somebody hugged me. SubhanAllah. Not to just give the money, but to be emotionally connected with them. And that's the identity of the Muslim. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when we spend on others and we give openly, and it's a part of our identity, and we give to those before they even ask. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقم الصلاة.